about everything relating to all of life, as we do in the 10-10 movement, and where anywhere where you're struggling, looking to get more successful. But tonight we are talking about our favorite subject, which is that of intimate relationships.
And absolutely, intimate relationships. Tony and I have been together for nearly 18 years now, and we have been working with people on their intimate relationships for all that time. And what we love about this is that actually, if whether you are single and looking to be in a great relationship, whether you're a woman or a man, or whether you're a guy in a relationship or a woman in a relationship, we know from our experience that that can be really tough. Either the relationship's not working, or you seem to be consistently looking for the right person, or going in and out of relationships that are just not working. So I had we've had some questions in already.
Yeah, I think it's not working.
Oh, right.
But anyway, I'm just checking. So we've got nobody
maybe
viewing.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe somebody could put something in the comments.
It's fine. I'm on it. Okay, just keep
great. Okay, so one of the questions that we had in was from someone saying, I hope I can stay up this late. Of course we have to be at 10 o'clock at night, because at 10 o'clock at night is, of course, we are the 10-10 movement. And what is really, really cool is that we are live at 10 o'clock. And somebody wrote in, which was fantastic, and said, you know, if I can get to stay up that late, I will, come into this live stream, and or I'll catch it on replay. And so I wrote and said, well, what would your question be? And of course, it came over as one of the questions that always comes up to us is, how do you navigate this online dating thing? Right. So okay, I mean, we've been talking to people about online dating for years and years. Of course, when we got together, I mean, it had begun. There was a bit of online dating going on, but nothing like there is nowadays. And the challenge is that sometimes people are not totally truthful when they're on online dating. They put something on their profile, they'll put a picture on that's not really them now. And sometimes they'll say things about themselves that are, shall we say, not so true. So it is about navigating this whole minefield of how do you find a genuine person. And I think the biggest thing that we have said, to give you the absolute bottom line, easiest way to deal with it, is to be really honest on your own profile. Give a picture of you looking your best, but in a natural way. And then what you write on your profile needs to be both, true about you and what you stand for, what your desires are, but also that you're truthful about what you want from a relationship. And sadly, I know years ago Tony and I we actually spoke in London to a group of dating site owners, and so many of them were not that interested in helping people get into a great relationship. They were kind of going, well, then that means we lose income, which is pretty scary thought when you think about it. But there was one guy that was there, which was eHarmony. He owned eHarmony, didn't he, honey? And he was kind of going, I really want to give people an education about how they get into a great relationship. So how do you navigate the online dating life? Well, you've got to be really honest yourself. And how do you navigate having streams of people coming towards you, some which might be genuinely a good match for you, and some might not be? And so I'd go,
okay,
sorry, I was thinking you were
no
busy doing stuff.
I am. But look, I think dating websites, they're fraught with difficulties. And of course, the dating site people will give you loads of stats about people that have gone off into the sunset together and got married and had 20 kids and all of that sort of stuff. But look, the stats for successful relationships on dating sites are not what they're made out to be. So it is a bit of a minefield. And I think the very, very first thing you need to do is to research which dating site you are going to go on. So, I think this is absolutely crucial. I know, for example, look, there is somebody, I can't remember who it is. I think it might have been Chris Rock, actually. It was a comedy thing. And he said, look, if you're a born again Christian, you're going to end up in a relationship, most likely with another born again Christian. Now, if you're a crackhead, you're going to end up in a relationship with a crackhead. Now, he made that as a bit of a joke, yeah. But actually, what's interesting is that there is an argument that you will always get into a relationship with whom you're in proximity with. So wherever you hang out, that both inline and offline, you are most likely to get into a relationship that's in that proximity. Mm-hmm. So if you're on a dating site, you want to be, in a proximity that's right for you and your values. Now, I think Nicki mentioned eHarmony. They're a very respected one. But I knew someone, for example, who run a dating site just for Christian people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they were very strict about who they let on it and, making sure. But look, the stats for people on dating websites that don't tell the truth, as Nicki was just saying, is horrendous. I mean, it's just horrendous. So you are fighting your way through that. And of course, look, if you're in the Tinder end of the dating sites, then I think that there's a problem there if you're looking for long-term relationships. So if you're looking for a long-term, proper, loving relationship, then firstly, it's a bit like anything. If you're going to buy a house, you need to do what I call due diligence. Yeah? If you do due diligence, then at least you're going to be, reasonably okay with the people you're mixing with. So then it's about testing and measuring, really. It's testing to see what comes in, are these people, your right sort of people and stuff like that. So I think due diligence is everything. But then I believe before you go on any dating site, you need to look at what you really want. What do you want to have happen from this experience? Yeah. Now, look, the thing is that, we always talk about three things really, which is love, sex and intimacy. Now, the word love is a very contentious word. We always say, look, it depends where you are in terms of your consciousness. So what does that mean? It means that your awareness of yourself and your surroundings and your way of life is a sort of a way of looking at your consciousness. So that means if you're hanging out in what I call the lower consciousness, the word love actually means something completely different to somebody who's hanging out in a slightly more, I don't like to do high and low really, but a more expanded conscious person will give a completely different meaning to the word love than they will to somebody in a less expanded consciousness. And of course, sex and intimacy, these are two completely different things. Yeah. So I think it's like doing a bit of learning first. If you've been unsuccessful in relationships, then I think the key thing is to give yourself some education. Because I always say, look, there were many things that were left off of the curriculum at your school or, in your school life. And intimate relationships is definitely one of the most important things, other than when I was around, a bit of sex education. So there wasn't so many teenage pregnancies, was about all there was. But I can assure you that most people are going from their teenage life where they start to get into relationships and get into their early 20s. They have no clue at all, as did not us. It took me till I was 47, you were sort of similar, before we understood like the rules of the game. And there are some very distinctive rules of the game. So and
I think the interesting thing is, I'm just looking down some of the comments and what people are saying. And, but some people will have had a horrendous experience because they will have gone on a dating site. They'll have got into interaction with people. I was talking to somebody very, very recently. They got interaction with people and then they met up. Now, the question was actually, well, how do you deal with that in lockdown? I think in actual fact, quite a good thing about lockdown is that, you'll go on a dating site, you'll start to communicate with somebody. You can have communication on this kind of platform, on a video, on Zoom or Team or whatever you call it. And you can start to ask people questions, not like some sort of intimidation, not like the police, as it were, but you can have conversations that ask people about their life, about what's important to them, about what it is that they want from the future. But also, you know, we've had a guy on just now, Mike, I don't know whether he's still on, and is having a bit of a laugh, going, "Are you swingers?" That's absolutely fine. Anybody can have a laugh. Like we were just saying about Chris Rock. If you watch Chris Rock, if you YouTube him and put about him about relationships, it's horrendous. I mean, he goes far too far. But when I say horrendous, it's quite funny. But the thing is, you know, you can have a conversation with somebody in very safe way, especially if you're a woman thinking, well, you know, I don't want to meet somebody before I've got into conversation with them. And then you can find out whether they're joking, like Mike's probably, or whether he's actually serious and asking us that question. So I think it's actually a really good thing that we're in lockdown, because you can get to know somebody, you know, in a way that you can spend time with them, but you haven't actually got to meet them. Now, of course, understandably, we know lots of people who've met people online. We know lots of people who have been married a long time or together a long time by meeting online, and that's all good. But it's most of the people that come to us for assistance come because they say, look, I've been on dating sites for this time. I've not met the right kind of people for me. And really, I'd like to, you know, I'd like to do better, find somebody more appropriate. So what I said at the beginning is absolutely my number one thing, is that you're really, really honest. And just to carry on from what Tony said, you're really, really honest. If you're looking for a long-term relationship, you're really, really honest. If in fact you're not, you're looking for just someone to go and have a bit of fun with on a date. And I think that that's really, really important to say that, to be honest about who you are, give an authentic picture, and then to get to know somebody as best you can on Zoom or whatever you use, so that this situation is safe, first of all, but secondly, that you find out things. And you know, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that what happens is sometimes, depending on people's personality styles, of course, sometimes they will talk a lot about themselves, but they don't really tell you anything. So it's about asking questions about their life, what's important to them, what they have fun doing, what do they want to do in the future, how they want to live their life, have they got, you know, have they got a great relationship with their family, have they got, you know, and all those sorts of things, which would be massive giveaways to whether that person is living, as Tony said, in a not good energy life, or whether they're living a good life. And the sort of definition we have of like what makes a great relationship is two human beings, both of whom are doing the best they can to be the best they can be, and then they come together as a couple and to share having a great life together, which is unfortunately a lot of what happens in intimate relationships, is that somebody's having a bad time, a bad life, they're not happy, they're not successful in the way they want to live their life, and they think that being in a relationship is going to make it all right. And it rarely, well, it doesn't work, because when you're not in a good state, you know, this is kind of philosophy, you may not think this is a truism, but we certainly experienced it this way, is what you put out, you get back. Yeah, so if you're not in a good state.
Yeah, so look, you know, we call our organisation, which is like a charity, the 10-10 movement. Now, the 10-10 means like looking to live a 10 out of 10 life experience. So my favourite, or our favourite question to ask you guys is, look, if you had to score your life on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is it's unbelievable, it's the absolute best it can be, and 0 is it's horrible right now, what number would you give yourself? Look, feel free to type that number in. Now, go on, have a type away. Also, just ask you the second question, as we're on intimate relationships. When you think of your intimate relationship life on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is it's amazing, it's fantastic, and 0 is it's a nightmare right now, you know, just pop your number in the box. You know, if you don't pop the number in the box, it's great, but hopefully you've got two numbers there now. Yeah. Now, some people, when they're single, give themselves a very low number. Yeah, but it's like we always say, well done, Jessica, thank you for sharing. That's a 9. Is that a 9 for life or a 9 for relationships? Yeah, but look, if you're a 9 for life and you genuinely having an amazing life, because 9's a brilliant score, yeah, still means you got a little bit of a gap, but not much, you know, then effectively, if you are out there in the market looking to get into a great relationship, the theory is if you're truthfully are, because sometimes in our head we can think we're a 9, but maybe we're not showing up at a 9. Yeah. So it's like how others perceive us. But if others perceive us in that what we would use, bit of a woo-woo word, energy, then the truth is you're very likely to meet somebody else that's having a great life. Yes. That is very much our experience. Yeah. So if we're saying 9 for life, 6 or 7 in relationships, then what's the gap? What's the gap, Iris, in the 6 or 7? Because 6 or 7 is quite a low score. And the reason we would say that's a low score is because the gap between 7 and 10 is quite a lot. So what do you think's like in your gap right now? That would be a great question to look at, because it's like, okay, current relationship 8 or 9. So okay, I'm a bit confused now. So we've got a 9.
Sorry, it's all different people. That's all.
Oh, sorry, Jessica and Iris. Sorry, Jessica's given us a 9. Iris is saying 6 or 7.
Actually, what I was going to say was this: if this is on your life, and you're giving your whole of your life a 6 or 7, or the whole of your life a 9, the very best thing you can do, not right now, because we're in the middle of this first ever 10 o'clock at Saturday Night Live, go to 1010 live test and do the test. Yeah. Is that right? 1010 live test.
If you go to www.10-10.live, there's a test there which you can do for all of your life.
Right. Maybe we'll put it in the thing later on.
But
my point of saying that was this: is whatever you are, you go to the 1010 live test and find out where in your life is the different numbers, so you can see where the places that you would need to work on.
Where the gaps
are. If it's your intimate relationship life, the very best thing to do is to look at your relationship. And if you're not in a relationship right now, look back at your previous relationships and look at what was the problem. What was the problem? And then the number one thing, and we want to give you the number one thing straight away, right here. Every time we're on this live, we're going to give you like what to do right now to have a better experience if you're in a relationship or you want to get into a relationship. So you look back at the previous one. And the very, very best thing to look at is you look at what am I doing? How am I showing up in that relationship that doesn't help this relationship to work better for the other person? What was I doing? If you've come out of a relationship, what was I doing that was actually impacting on this relationship? How was I living my life? What was my health and temper, as I call it, like? Because then we're going to really know what we have to work on. And there's no way on earth we're going to have a great relationship. This was our experience, wasn't it? That we had to get ourselves in a great place, whether you're in a relationship or not. You've got to work on yourself, get yourself in a great place, so that automatically then the relationship will work better.
Yeah, so like we say, and like Nikki said, look, like energy attracts like energy. So so I'm a bit confused with Iris, because she's given us a 6 to 7, and then she's gone 8 to 9 for your current relationship. So look, it can be that your relationship you're doing great on, and the rest of life's been a bit of a challenge. Yeah. That's all good, but give us some more insights, and we'll see what we can do to help. So when you think, I think my relationship's really good at the moment, if there was a gap and you're open to share what is in the gap, then obviously we could chat about what's in your gap, maybe just to see. Or if it's the rest of life that's a bit of a challenge, what's in the life gap? So as soon as we know what's in the gap, we can sort of help you. Happy to help you right here, right now. So
so what questions have you got? That's this live Q&A. Obviously Tony and I have made many videos, many of which you can see on the 1010 movement, but on particular in intimate relationships, as I said at the beginning, really it doesn't matter what your intimate relationship situation is at the moment. Often we will talk to people who actually are a 9 out of 10 in their relationship, and then we ask them another question, and the other question we often ask is this. Again, a 0 to 10 question. We're all about the 0 to 10. Is on a 0 to 10, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not met at all, your needs are not met at all in that relationship, and number 10, and 10 is all your needs are met in that relationship as a woman or a man, right? What number are you at? And so often, sometimes we can get into that okayness in relationships. I'm not saying that's the case here with Jessica, because maybe she her and her partner are denying, and that's great. But often we can get into that okayness where then when we ask the question, how are my needs being met in this relationship, it's a lower score. Or maybe it's even the 0 to 10 on the intimacy and the connection that you have in that relationship. The most difficult thing for a relationship is when it's okay. Funny enough, when it's really dysfunctional, when there's a lot of pain in the relationship, then normally somebody tries to do something about it. Either somebody breaks up with that relationship, or they go for help with that relationship, or something happens. But when we're in like okayness can go on for a very long time. And then when we start looking at, well, are my feminine needs met, or my masculine needs met in this relationship, or my intimate needs met in this relationship, then the number starts to go down. How many times have we worked with couples where they kind of go, well, you know, we're getting on okay. And they'll say things to us like, but surely after X amount of years, nobody has a really great intimate life. Nobody has, you know, a fantastic connection all of the time. Well, yes, clearly, sometimes there will be more connection in the relationship and sometimes not. But often what will happen is over time, other things get in the way. Children, having children in the relationship, ex-partners, work, money, all sorts of things, health, all sorts of things have such a dramatic effect on the quality of your intimate relationships that sometimes we forget what we really wanted from that relationship in the first place. So I think that, you know, really we've got to be honest about our score. And I'm not saying you're not being honest about your score. I'm just saying that we have to make sure that we're not being just okay there.
Yeah,
so,
indeed.
Tony B, what else have you got to say about that?
I think it's all good. I think if you just literally are honest, you know, a couple of weeks back, in fact, on the 10-10 movement, you'll find a video where we had a couple that were really struggling, really struggling. And they watched the video where I did 2 0 to 10 questions, which one was, where are you in your relationship right now, and where are you in intimacy right now? And they both scored very low, but then the solution to that was to actually have a bit of a heart-to-heart conversation, yeah, because obviously these heart-to-heart conversations don't happen very often. If you are actually a bit disconnected, you'll find the last thing you want to do is actually have a nice heart-to-heart conversation. In fact, we sort of tend to avoid each other and do all sorts of things to go, you know, dance around the handbags a little bit and not have a truth session. Anyway, the magic happened as these couple were prepared to share their scores. Yeah. So often, you know, another good question is, if you think, you know, your relationship, you score it wherever you're scoring it. If we're working with couples, we absolutely do this. We say, so what's your score for the relationship, and what's your score for intimacy in the relationship? And we get them to keep it separate so they don't see, and then we get them to share. Men always go first, so they share, and very often those numbers are radically different. So one person might be having a much higher experience in the relationship, or that, as Nicki said, their needs are being met at a higher level, while the other person's needs are not being met at all. And the person who's like doing okay is really quite shocked that the other person's really struggling. So this is where I think it's about understanding each other's needs. And we always say there's 2 sets of needs. So as a guy, you have needs as a man, and you also have like your personal needs. You know, individually, we're different people. You know, some people like rugby, some people like football, some people don't even like sport. You know, so we've all got things that we like as an individual. But as a man, you've got needs that need to be met. And if your woman doesn't know those needs, then she has a real difficult time trying to meet those needs, because what often happens is she's filtering what she thinks you want rather than what you do want. So of course the truth is we definitely don't share. Now that's happening in the reverse as well. So a woman has needs, and men, I promise you, very few men understand what women really want. And I am definitely guilty of that. You know, like I always say, it took me 47 years to realize that
we're guilty of it, not now.
Yeah, that women don't want what I want. They have different needs, you know. So I'm going, well, I don't understand. I feel like I'm doing everything perfectly, of course, can't possibly be my fault. I'm doing everything perfectly, so I don't understand why you're unhappy. But of course, what I'm not doing is I'm not meeting her needs. That's either her individual needs as a person. I would say, look, there's no point in taking your woman to a Chinese restaurant if she doesn't like Chinese food. Why would you do that? But if you don't ask her and you assume as a man, then you're going to be in some sort of trouble. So I would say 2 sets of needs of the woman. All women have needs that are very similar. And then they've got their personal individual needs. And as a man, it's our job to find out what those are and then deliver those. If you deliver those consistently. So let's tell you the story. Yeah. The story that just demonstrates this. We've done this with hundreds of audiences, I guess, yeah. And often in our seminars, we have in the past, we've had the men sit one side of the room and the women sit the other side of the room with a bit of a gap in between, yeah. And then I always share this story. So I say to women, and the men are obviously listening, I said, well, which of these would you prefer? And this is where the world's gone a little bit crazy, because men not understanding what women want causes them to do things in a way that makes them actually disconnect more from their woman. So I will say to women, there's 2 stories, and women, you can tell me which one you prefer. Yeah. So man phoned woman up in the middle of the day and says, would you like to go out tonight for dinner? So she says, well, yes. He then says, great, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to sort of Indian or Chinese or fish and chips? If it's a cheapskate, I always say. Yeah. So she said, oh, well, I'd like to go for an Indian. Great. So then he says, well, could you just book the restaurant for us then? Yeah. Great. Make it for like 7:30. So there's that. That, believe it or not, is probably what most men think women want. Yeah. Now, check this one out, women. This is like a different way of saying it. So would you prefer your man to ring you up and go, so I'm taking you out tonight, so get ready, be ready for 7:30, put something really special on, because I'm taking you somewhere really, really nice. It's a bit of a surprise, so I'm not going to tell you where it is. Just be ready, 7:30, I'll pick you up and we're off. Nice night out for both of us. Which would you prefer, number 1 or number 2? Yeah, type number 1 or number 2 in there. Number 1 being he's asking you questions and getting you to book it. Number 2 is he's taking you on a beautiful night out. That's a great surprise. Now, I can tell you that more than 95% of women say number 2. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. They could be what I would call hardened feminists, and still they'll say number 2. And that is because their feminine needs as a woman being taken care of and loved and looked after are being taken care of. Whereas in number 1, which is what men have come to think, women want is they want to be asked what they want.
That's right. And let me just, before it goes up underneath where I can't see it, Iris put a nice comment on, and she said that, oh, where's it gone?
There you go.
That's just disappeared.
Oh, was it that one?
No, it's further down.
Okay.
If you can get further down. There we go. Okay. So Iris said that when she did our test, she got 7 out of 10, and with the gap was based on financials. So we'll perhaps come back to that.
Yeah.
We could do. But she said, I suppose I'm at the moment really working on myself. Fantastic, Iris. My relationship is great from what I know. A little bit of a giveaway there. Let me come back to that. But we're doing long distance. Now, of course, the question that we had in tonight was about relationships within lockdown. So if you're in a situation because you're doing long distance, either because of lockdown or because you're just doing long distance because you're both living in different parts of the country or the world, what I think is really true to think about, Iris, is that you're saying my relationship is great from what I know. And I would suggest exactly what Tony said earlier, which was that, like, we as women need to find out whether we're meeting men's needs or not. Okay, and how we could support them, how we could meet their needs, what do they want from the relationship. And obviously Tony would say to men the same. So the reason why we shouldn't be frightened to find out whether the relationship's going great for your partner is because it's better to know what it is that's maybe missing for them, and decide that you want to, and if you want to, of course, you want to meet that need. Or you then you get into a conversation where your partner might ask you, well, are your needs being met in that relationship? Now, this might sound, I'm conscious of the fact that this might sound like a heavy conversation. It doesn't have to be. It could be like you're having a long distance relationship and you go, hey, let's chat this Saturday night or whatever it is. You're having a drink together on Zoom or whatever it is. And you say, hey, I was just thinking today, I think our relationship's doing great considering we're long distance. How is it for you? And really listen to how that person's feeling. Are their needs being met? And as Tony said, the big thing that he didn't realize before he learned this, I didn't realize until I learned it, is that our needs as men or women, depending on what relationship you're in, whether you're a same-sex relationship or whether you're a heterosexual relationship, doesn't make any difference, that men and women want different things out of a relationship. And I just wanted to come quickly onto Jessica's what Jessica said when she says, why do men always fight with women in a relationship? Now, that's a big question, but let me answer it from my perspective. And then Tony, I'm sure, will answer it from the man's perspective. My understanding is that there's lots of things that women do which will create a situation in a man that he feels told what to do, for example, mothered, for example. He's somebody's trying to control him, for example. A woman is trying to have him behave in a way that works for her, but clearly doesn't work for him. There's lots and lots of reasons and lots of patterns that women do that they don't even realize they're doing, that can cause a man to, you've used the word fight. I'm trusting that you're not really meaning the word fight in terms of fight. If you are, then, please do mention it and we'll talk about that, because we've helped people with violence in their relationship. But always thinking, why is this person fighting with me? Again, like I said earlier, and I know how tough this is, you've got to look at, how am I being in this relationship? How do I behave? Just what am I doing in my behavior when he starts to get like into that fighting mode with me? What am I doing? And of course, if that was a guy writing that about a woman, then we'd be asking him the same question. So Tom, what would you say about that?
Look, there's several answers. It's a big subject, something we talk about for like weeks and weeks and weeks. So to give it in a couple of seconds, I've got to pick the best example. But I think the example that really comes to me is that a relationship is the coming together of like, in some quarters of the world, in the more Eastern world, they'll call it the yin and the yang. And so these two things actually are meant to fit together. My favorite, I don't think I've got any here actually, my favorite example actually is a set of batteries. Yeah, a set of batteries. Because look, if you have two batteries, the batteries you put in a torch, I always say, look, there's 4 ways that you can put those batteries in a torch. But actually there's only 1 way that you can put them in and the light goes on. So there's 3 ways that the light won't work. So if we assume that, a relationship, lights up when it's firing on all cylinders and you're really feeling the love inside of you shared with the love inside of them, and it's a really loving relationship, that would be equivalent of the 2 batteries being the right way around in the torch, and boom, the light goes on. Yeah, and that means you have to have the plus at one end of the plus needs to be at the top and at the bottom. So think of it like when you were at school, you were taught about magnetism. Yeah, so when you had 2 magnets and the opposite poles, so the plus met the minus, there's like a force that pulls them together. It's like you've only got to put them near each other and they go like that. That's what a loving relationship's like, when the polarity, or you could call it the yin and yang, fit together. Now, what's happened in modern life, and this is where this is a little bit contentious, but look, let's just go with it, yeah, is that in the modern world, we've sort of drifted from like 100 to 200 years ago, where the male was very, what I call, unhealthily dominant. You could call that, meant the vast majority of males were acted in a very superior way, and that the women of the day were very inferior, and this led to, you know, masses of problems. I mean, masses of relationship problems in what, you know, in England we call Victorian times. Other parts of the world, I guess, you know, Victoria was obviously, you know, known around the world, so maybe that's good enough, yeah. But here we are, we've sort of swung through the 1900s, and, you know, in the 1960s, it's interesting that feminism, or the early roots of feminism, came to the fore. And you know, it was all started in the UK, in the Ford factory, where there was an inequality with the wages. You know, the girls said, look, hold on a minute, you know, we come into the factory in the morning, we work our arse off, and the men are doing their thing, but, you know, they're getting more money than us, and why is that? And they went on strike. It's very famous. There's a film made about it as well, like a, you know, a Hollywood movie, and it's very accurate, actually. It was like, you know, things get Hollywoodized, but the truth is the feminist movement was born from that, and it was born from this massive disparity. If it was a pair of scales, it would be like this. And of course, what happened is the feminist movement tried to balance the scales out, but I think if they made what I call a fundamental error, really. They made a fundamental error in as much that what they thought they had to do was, funnily enough, you use the word fight, is that they felt they needed to fight the man. Now, what that means in my world is that they used, and look, every man, so I'm made up of male energy and female energy, or feminine, call it masculine and feminine energy. My beautiful wife's made up of the same. Now, we've done lots and lots and lots of tests on this, yeah? But we come up with, very roughly, if we took an average, you'd say the average man is about 70% masculine and 30% feminine. And the average woman is the opposite way round. Now, when you meet in that position and that you're healthy with this energy, then this causes the attraction. Now, the problem with early feminism is that what happened is that, in my view, is that because the women started to try to fight the men, what they did is they inadvertently, and look, this was not deliberate in any way, I'd be saying, look, they didn't really realize what they were doing. They just wanted to get the balance to be fairer, which nobody's going to argue with, you know. But I think in doing so, that what they did is they inadvertently turned their male energy up and their female energy down. Now, if you put, you know, if you put two men together, I always say, if you put two men together, you can watch it. It's like absolutely fun, really, to watch. They do banter, you know. It's like, I'm a stronger man than you. You watch a lot of animals in the animal world and they'll do it. You know, giraffes, male giraffes. Watch two male giraffes have a fight over a female, because what sort of happens in nature is that the stronger of the men get the women, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that in nature is the strongest genes go forward to keep future generations strong. Now, at some level, we are animals, whether we like it or not. So this banter that goes on, which is a little bit like, you know, deers locking horns, yeah, you know, is what men do. Now, if a woman turns up her male energy, she becomes more masculine. Now, the interesting thing is that when you've got a woman who's in what I call her secondary energy, and she's turned her male energy up, what she starts to do is she starts to challenge her man. She challenges him on everything, yeah? He tries to make the decision. He wants to be the strong one. But of course, in this whole, you know, movement to masculine and feminine energy, men have got very confused, yeah? Men have got very confused. And so what they've done is they've turn their male energy down, and so many men today have gone more what I call feminine. So now, instead of the yin and yang the right way round, it's like they're the wrong way round, and instead of, like, you know, attracting each other, they're like repelling each other. Now, this might all sound quite complicated, but I promise you that for all the thousands of couples that we've worked with, there are two key problems. This one is one of the big ones, yeah? That almost all relationships that fall out, and we're talking about fighting, we're talking about really challenging, and that can be anything from, you know, verbal, you know, fighting, it could be emotional or mental fighting, could be physical fighting, you know, is not good. And what's happening is that the two male energies are clashing, and the man hate being challenged. I mean, the word hate is a very strong word. It's a very low energy word, in fact, yeah. But men dislike being challenged, because what it's like for them is it's like having a knife stuck in their male masculinity. So they then can get, you know, they can get aggressive. Even a more feminine man eventually will fight back. He'll fight back, and he won't, because he won't like being challenged by a woman. It's like, we are going, like the humans have done with so many things, we are going against nature. And a lot of people sort of, you know, when we start sharing this stuff, people start saying that you're all old fashioned, you're living in the 50s and stuff like that. But the point is, it's much older than that. You know, we're going back to, like, look, the animate part of us, whether we like it or not, overwrites the logical part. And the logical part that has come up with all these ideas of how we could do things is really what happens when you come up with ideas is you don't think of the consequences. And the consequences of males lowering their male energy and females up in their male energy is that we get out of sync. And I promise you that almost every relationship we see, almost every relationship that is not working, that is exactly what's happening. And often there's a lot of fighting goes on in one form or another.
Yeah, and I just wanted to you know, tidy up that from a female perspective, is that what we are not doing here, I just want to say this really, really clearly, what we're not doing here is condoning any kind of aggressive behavior, whether that's verbal, emotional, you know, or physical. Absolutely not condoning that. Tony, what Tony said is right. It actually comes from the fact that women have decided, quite rightly so, that they're not going to, over periods of a long, long time, they're not going to be suppressed in any way like they would have been done when men were very dominant with them. But actually, in some ways, and this has come over a couple of generations as far as we can see, is that women, in a way, the pendulum has gone too far, where the good idea about, you know, women being able to do any job, quite rightly, why shouldn't a woman be a bricklayer or a heart surgeon or a, you know, or anything, a plumber or whatever she wants to be? Of course that's okay. The difficulty is when you've got, as Tony said, you've got two people being the hunter, the provider, the male in that relationship, then that does cause, you know, women just gonna have to accept this. It does cause men to feel less than in some way.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing about the dinner argument. Yeah, so when I ask the dinner question, almost all women say number two. Almost all women, you know, I can see there's a bit of a confusion.
Yeah, well, I was just going to talk about that actually.
But look, it's interesting that almost all go for number two, and that is because that story hits your, what I call your feminine energy. It's male energy talking to female energy, and those two things attract each other.
Yes.
Now, when the man goes feminine and he starts asking you questions and giving you the baton to be the decider, as a woman, that might logically sound good, but all we have seen in our time is that runs very thin. It runs very thin over a period of time. For some women, it runs, you know, quite quickly, where they suddenly go, they're not attracted to that man anymore. They're not attracted to him because it's like the nature. So it's not logical. You have to accept it's not logical. There's an animate part of us going on that goes, this bloke is not able to protect me. And now that's all unconscious, it's all subconscious stuff. But actually, you get a sense that he's not a strong man. And if you know what we see happen in modern relationships, when women feel like, even if they don't even know this is happening, that this is not a strong man, what they do is they take the lead. They take the lead in everything. Now, this then becomes a nail in the coffin of your relationship, because the effect on the man is unbelievable. It'll massively move away. So everything we're doing in modern world is sort of, if we don't learn this stuff and learn to reverse it, which is what we did, then actually what we're doing is we're getting into relationships which have a bit of connection to start with, but then it gets very weak and woolly. and then it breaks. And look, let me give you some stats. At the moment, we can look it up. There's around between 100,000 and 150,000 divorces a year in the UK. It has gone down a bit, funnily enough, but of course there's less. The marriage thing's changed a little bit. There's a lot more people in a relationship where there's no marriage, but of course the laws change a little bit now, and those relationships, if you're in a long-term intimate relationship, some of the rules around that now are very similar to marriage. So the relationship breakdowns, let's say, are 2,500 to 3,000 a week people go into court and getting a divorce. And then you've got all the people that are not married, breaking up. And when you look at all of that, you'll see this massive disconnection. And when you find out what's going on, you find out two things, really. One is that their energy is very low. So when you score their life on the scale of 0 to 10, nobody's high up the scale. They're all low down the scale. So their needs are not being met at a high level. And so then their relationship needs aren't met at a high level. So we've got individuals that are struggling in life, and then of course their relationship starts to struggle in life, and of course we can end up with this whole fight thing that you've described, Jessica.
Absolutely.
Which is very sad.
I mean, Iris is just saying, would you say that goes for when the female makes more money than male? Not, she says, not in my case, but I'm just asking. And so what I was just going to share, to underpin what Tony said from the female perspective is, let's just be really clear here. This is nobody's fault. We're not saying, women have become more masculine in their approach to life. This is just literally over a couple of 2 or 3 generations that society has created a situation that says, quite frankly, we're all the same. And therefore, women have started to act in a slightly more masculine way. Now, that's not terrible in its own as it stands alone. Women have been earning the same money or even earning more money. They get their security, they get a mortgage, they get a place, or whatever that is. All that is on the surface of it. There's nothing wrong with that. But what tends to happen is when that's happening in a relationship, the woman may be doing more of that to feel safe in herself. In other words, it's going against nature in the way that we see it, where it's much more healthy, much more natural for the woman to feel taken care of. That may be in this modern day world that the man might be more the provider or the breadwinner, not necessarily, but she feels emotionally and physically taken care of. And therefore what happens is she doesn't feel that, so she then becomes more masculine to feel safe. Then on the other hand, the guy who doesn't like that, because it just doesn't feel right for him, that he's not taking the sort of taking care, looking after the woman, looking after the home, looking after the sort of male role, as it were, he starts feeling less good about himself. And every time she does something like, this is why I was just going to share with you, Jessica, is that you've put that you quite like the number 1, where he rings up and says, would you like to go out, and where would you like to go? She's
also put number 2.
Yes,
so
yes,
I'm going,
I know.
Okay.
But I was saying, when she's put number 1, it's like, if you were really going, well, actually, I'm not sure about that. It sounds all right to me. That might be what you've been used to. And of course, that keeps you safe, because you go, he asks me everything. He asks me where I want to go. He asks me what I want to eat. He gets me to book it, and I feel safe. And by the way, many, many women will go, after a while, as Tony said, after a while, they get tired of that, and they go, oh, for goodness sake, like, I feel like I'm doing everything. And he just does nothing. He just goes to work, goes to the pub, goes to the sport, and comes home, and that's it. So what happens is, as women take more interactive role in the decision-making process in lots of areas in their life, and in some cases what happens, which is really dysfunctional, is that the man kind of gives up. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying he does that because he just can't be bothered to fight anymore. He gives up. And then the poor woman thinks, well, if he's not going to do it, I better do everything. Then she's exhausted, and the whole thing just deteriorates and deteriorates. And when a man's in that situation, what we've noticed is the man feels bad about himself, in which case he goes into a bad energy with himself, in which case he is then more likely to argue, fight, whatever you call it. And therefore the woman's going, why is he being horrible to me when actually I feel like I'm looking after them, I'm going to work and looking after the children and doing all the bills, paying all the bills and tidying and putting the bins out and doing the garden. And she'll say all those things, because we actually wrote a book, an ebook with I do all the work and he does nothing, because we had so many women come. But that came about, or has come about, by it sort of just getting out of balance. What Tony said about the batteries is the key. That is the reason. There was no more complicated reason that this energy between man and woman has got out of kilter, and therefore neither is getting their needs met, therefore arguing, splitting up, infidelity, no intimacy, or not good intimacy happens. And this happens over time, and it can be really painful, because obviously intimate relationships are meant to give us joy, when so often they give us pain.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is, again, comparing us with the animal kingdom. Look, whether we like it or not, we are animals of the planet. Now, we are a bit of an unusual animal. In fact, there are only a very few animals that have got the attributes that we as humans have. And I can give you a bit of a list, actually. And the list is dolphins, who it's argued are advanced over our way of being, yeah, because they've more mastered their environment than we have. Whales, definitely, as well. Again, masters of their environment. Their only predators are humans. Nothing really worries them other than a human. So, yeah, and we've done our fair share of killing whales, which is very sad, for a creature that's way advanced in terms of their abilities than the human, in terms of mastering their environment. There's a few that are more domesticated. Dogs, for example, not obviously quite like us, but because we trained dogs, they've got a bit of an element like we have. Cats sometimes as well. Anything that's like it becomes a domestic pet at a higher level. Horses are also another one, yeah. Monkeys potentially as well. But beyond that, the rest of the animal kingdom are, more simple. So, and what I mean by more simple is not to denigrate them in any way, but over the generations where they've evolved, what they've done is they've evolved in an environment that stayed very stable. And that means that the way they operate from a male-female viewpoint is very amazing. And if you watch like any of the old David Attenborough films, which have been made beautifully over the last 50, 60 years, he always sort of, he shows, mating and all of that sort of stuff. And none of that's ever changed. But of course, because the environment hasn't changed. Now, obviously, in the last 100 years, it said that, unfortunately, the humans destroying the planet have killed off about half of the animals that could become extinct in the last just 100, 200 years, which is very scary, yeah? Because of what we do to meet our own personal needs. But I think what's different is that we've evolved, but our environment has changed massively, and not just in terms of where we live, the way we live. You think of all the modern things, like, it's only like a few years ago, we would never have been able to do this because it didn't exist. Pre-2000, you couldn't have done any of this. I mean, maybe even way less than that. How long's Facebook Live or YouTube Live been around? It's only a few years. So if you go back far enough, you won't even find a mobile phone, not that far, but you haven't got to go that far back. So technology has massively changed the environment that we live in and the way we, happen. I mean, look, think of internet dating. I mean, this is a massive change in the way that humans meet each other. And with any change, there's consequences, yeah? So, and I think that the way it is, whether we like it or not, is, as I said earlier, the animate part of us is still there. But the logical part of us is taking control. It's taking control on a massive way. But the consequences are that we, as I said at the very beginning, we don't have any knowledge of intimate relationships. this was left off the curriculum of the school, along with a lot of other things that are very important to the well-being of our life. So, for example, we were talking about, money came up, for example, yeah? Well, I always say, look, did anybody teach you anything about money at school? And the answer is no, it's not on the curriculum. It's not. Taught you about maths. So some of the key things that lead us to have a happy, healthy, fulfilled life are left off the school curriculum, and we find ourselves then at late teens where we start to become independent, and we don't have some of the basic life tools that we need. And then add in a very fast moving, changing environment, and we tend to get all over the place. So I think that it's not about going backwards, it's about educating ourselves as to how we operate, understand how we operate, and then it's much easier to live a great life. So we always sort of say, look, if you want to live a more 10 out of 10 life experience, then you have to educate yourself on the bits that we never learned about early on. So, once we learned some of the basic fundamentals of having a great intimate relationship, our score went massively up. But interestingly enough, so did our happiness. If you're in a happy, loving relationship, your happiness and your fulfillment level massively goes up. I mean, it's just, I can't tell you how much. It's almost like you could go from, you could go very near a 10. But if the foundations of a relationship are not built around a good education and understanding of how to play the game, we're going to need to plug.
I was just going to stop you there,
actually we're going to fall short of having the experience that we want to have. So we're just going to have to move our computer because it's giving us a big message that our battery's running out. So we better plug it in quick. So excuse us for a second.
Yeah, I was just thinking about money. I was just thinking about something actually when we were talking about dating sites early on, and that was that one or two of the couples that I've worked with recently or spoken to, I've noticed something about money that's been really interesting. Now, I'm not saying they've all met online, because they haven't. Some of them have met during work or during events or whatever they however they've kind of got together, but it's just the same. And I was just thinking about it, going like, I see relationships find it really difficult, for example, when each person in the relationship has a completely different model of money completely. And so sometimes, when we were used to do relationship courses, we used to ask people questions about how they value money in their lives. And we'd find out that people that had been married for years who kept arguing about money, suddenly realizing that the problem, which could have been found out when they first got together by just understanding each other at a different way than people do now, is that, and that people do most often, is to actually find out, well, how do you view money? Like, what's your spending, the way you spend? Do you save? Do you, and this can be so detrimental to the relationship. I was working with a couple recently, and it was like, he's like absolutely adamant that like you are so cautious with money that you would downsize, for example, when things are a bit tough, like they might be for some people right now, they may be for you right now because of lockdown, because of COVID, things like that. And all of a sudden, there perhaps is less money in your, in your situation, between you or individually. And all of a sudden, the one person goes, oh, no, we'll be fine, we'll remortgage, or we'll find another form of income. And the other partner might go, no, we need to get rid of this place and get somewhere cheaper. That in itself is like so opposite in the way that person views money, spends money, saves money, and things like that. That in itself can be a thing that can just destroy the relationship, because they just go, well, like, I mean, we always used to say, like, the foundation of the problems in the relationship is, well, like, if you were more like me, everything would be all right, whereas actual fact, whenever we look at some subject within life, parenting, children, money, where you want to live, how you want to live, what the standard is of what you live by, if you don't get it right from the beginning and get somebody at least on the same page as you, if not similar to you, then there's going to be challenges.
Indeed. Well, look, it's 11 o'clock. We've been going for an hour, so I trust you've got some great insights from that, and that's been useful in some way. If you have any questions, then please whack them in the box below the video on YouTube, which is where we're broadcasting most of this from.
Yes.
And yeah, look, remember, there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube. There's over 70 odd videos on all different aspects of life, lots of relationship ones, because that's our specialist subject. And yeah, if you haven't done the 10-10 life test, as we said, go to www.10-10.life, do the test, and then actually, you know, look, it's part of charity, it's all free. You know, tell your friends, anybody that's struggling in any area of life, send them to that website, get them to do the test. And when you do the test, you get a series of videos completely free, looking at each areas of life, giving you ideas and suggestions as what you can do to improve your life so that you live nearer to a 10 out of 10. So there we go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here on our first day. Now, if you're here watching this on replay, do still put comments in, because we'll obviously see your comments. We can answer those questions. And yeah,
please do also, if you're new to the channel, hit the old
subscribe button
and the old notification bell, ding ding. And yeah, feel free to share the videos with any family or friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from listening to us talk about this subject. So yeah, thanks again. We'll be back next Saturday, 10 p.m. Yeah, I think hopefully we'll get the tech a bit better next week. But it's one of those things, when you do it first time, you just have to learn which buttons to press and how to interact. So that's it from us.
Oh yeah,
have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you for commenting.
Thank you for commenting and sharing and being so open and answering some of the questions. And yeah, we'll learn next week. We'll see if we can get somebody on live and have a chat with them and see if we can get that bit going. Yeah. So yeah, tell your friends about next week. See you at 10 o'clock. And have a great rest of the week.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.